Okay, so we're looking at practice problems for chapter 6. Let's go ahead and read the instructions. All questions are based on 12 trailing month data unless otherwise specified. Answer each question and provide the ratio you used for your answer. All right, so for all these questions, we are looking at a company called Sound Capture, or SC, and it's a comparable company. We're given Sound Capture's financial statements and then ratio analysis performed on both Sound Capture and its comparable company. Okay, so question number 1, which company is bigger? So the cardinal metric we use to determine a firm's size is sales. So we're going to go ahead and look at the ratio analysis, compare Sound Capture's sales to its comparable sales, and whichever company has the large amount of sales, that's going to be the bigger company. Let's go over to the ratio page, and it says that Sound Capture's sales is more than double its comparable sales. So Sound Capture is the bigger company, and we determine that by looking at sales. All right, question number 2, which company is most profitable? We're going to look at profit margin because that tells us how much net income this company is making based off of its sales. In other words, how profitable is this company? So go ahead and look at ratio analysis. We'll go find profit margin down here, net income divided by sales. We'll go look at this data. All right, so we do not know what's in box 4, so we're going to have to solve for that. And that would be profit margin 12 trailing months of Sound Capture. But we do have a comparable profit margin. Okay, so for solve box number 4, we are going to need both the net income and sales. All right, so we'll go to financial statements, we'll find these items, and then we'll solve for box 4. So you're going to find this on the income statement. So net income is right here, 42.84, and sales, or in other words, revenues, is up here. All right, and to solve for profit margin, we are just going to divide net income by sales. Divide net income by sales, and we get 3.81%. And so if we compare Sound Capture's profit margin, which is what we just solved for, we can see that that is less than its comparable's profit margin, which means that its comparable company is more profitable. So go back to questions, and we'll say the comparable company, and we determine this by looking at profit margin. Question number 3, which company probably has the best opportunity to increase its profitability by reducing its SG&A cost? All right, in order to solve for this problem, we are going to look at the SG&A margin, because that is how much their SG&A cost is over its total number of sales. All right, so that is right down here. We don't have to solve for anything, it's just given to us right here. So you can see that Sound Capture's is 16% and its comparable companies is 5%. So because Sound Capture has the greatest margin, they have the best opportunity to reduce this margin. And so if you reduce a cost margin, that will make your overall company more profitable because you're able to bring more of your sales and revenues down to the net income. So if we go back to question number 3, Sound Capture has the best opportunity to increase its profitability by reducing its SG&A cost, and we determine this by looking at SG&A margin. Okay, question number 4, which company gets the most sales from each dollar of its assets? So to answer this question, we're going to look at the asset efficiency ratio, because this tells us how much sales we were able to generate based on the beginning period assets. So we'll go find asset efficiency ratio, it's right down here, and we have to solve for a box again, box number 8. And this will be Sound Capture's asset efficiency ratio, 12 trailing months. All right, and to solve for box number 8, we need sales and assets beginning of period. All right, so we'll go ahead and actually just take sales from up here, put that down here, and then we'll go find what assets were at the beginning of the period. So we're gonna have to go up to the balance sheet, assets, total assets, and the beginning of this 12 trailing months period is the exact same thing as saying the end of this period right here. So what we need to solve this problem is this Q5 number right down here. Okay, and then once we have both those numbers, we can go ahead and solve for the asset efficiency ratio by dividing sales by assets. All right, and then we're gonna get this 0.68 number, which is greater than its comparables number, which means that Sound Capture is doing a better job of generating sales from its assets. So we are gonna say that Sound Capture gets the most sales from each dollar of its assets, and we solve this by using the asset efficiency ratio. Question number 5, which company turns over its inventory the fastest? To solve for this one, we are going to look at the inventory efficiency ratio. Watch the ratio analysis page, find inventory efficiency ratio, which is just your COGS divided by the inventory at the beginning of period, and we have to solve for another box. This tells us inventory efficiency ratio, 12 trailing months of Sound Capture. Solve for this, we are going to need COGS, as well as inventory beginning of period. All right, so we'll go to financial statements and go find those items. COGS will be found on the income statement, which is right down here, 12 trailing months. And then the inventory at the beginning of the period is going to be found on the balance sheet. Inventory is right here, and then we're looking at the beginning of period, not the end of period. So the beginning period of the 12 trailing months, again, it will just be the end of the period right before this 12 trailing months begins. So that would be quarter 5, inventory right here. And once we have both these numbers, we can solve for the inventory efficiency ratio, which is just your COGS divided by your inventory beginning period. And you get 3.81, which is greater than the comparable company. So we're going to say that Sound Capture is better at going through its inventory. So we said Sound Capture, and we said because of the inventory efficiency ratio. Question number 6, which company best manages its accounts payable? So to answer this question, we are going to look at its accounts payable turnover ratio, which is down here, right there. And this is just accounts payable end of period divided by COGS. And you find those answers right here, and it looks like Sound Capture's is significantly less than its comparables. So we're going to say that its comparable does a better job of managing its accounts payable. So we'll say comparable and the accounts payable turnover ratio. All right, question number 7, which company is most highly levered? So to answer this question, we could use one of 2 different ratios. We could either use debt to assets or debt to capitalization. Both those will get us the exact same result. I'm going to use debt to capitalization to solve this, but either way will work. Going to the ratio analysis, let's go find where debt to capitalization is. It's right down here. All right, and we have to solve for another box, which is box 18. To solve for this, we are going to need total debt and total equity. All right, we'll go to financial statements, go find out what these numbers are. All right, so total debt is going to be found on the balance sheet. Be sure when you're solving for total debt that you have both your short-term debt and your long-term debt. Okay, so total debt is equal to short-term, which is right here, plus long-term, which is right down here. So this is the total debt number. We're going to put that over to the ratio analysis page. We'll go solve for total equity, which would be right down here. Schiller Hall's equity. We have equity right here. 12 trailing months, 800.965. To solve for box 18, we are just going to use the capitalization equation. So that is total debt divided by total debt plus total equity. And this just tells us what percent of firm's capitalization is financed by debt. And we get 0.52, or in other words, 52%. And so this tells us that Sound Capture finances a lot more by debt than its comparable company. In other words, they are more highly levered. So that's the answer to this question, Sound Capture, and it's because we looked at the debt to capitalization ratio. Okay, question number 8, about how many years would it take Sound Capture to pay down all of its debt if it devoted all of its Ebit to this effort? Round to the nearest year. Okay, so we are going to solve this problem at the debt to Ebit ratio, which we're going to find on a ratio analysis page. Debt to Ebit, it's right here. Again, we have to solve for a box. To solve for this, we are going to need total debt as well as Ebit. Okay, so total debt we actually just solved for, so we are just going to steal that number from up here, and then we need to go find what Ebit is. So Ebit is not directly given on the income statement, but we can easily solve for it by simply taking the pre-tax income, right, because that will be earnings before tax, and then adding back the interest. And this works because you take earnings before tax and before you subtracted the interest. So to solve for this, you take the pre-tax income, which is 63.803, and add the interest, which is this number right here, 47.289. All right, and then you get 111.092. All right, using both these numbers, we're going to go ahead and solve for the debt to Ebit ratio, which will just take our total debt and divide by Ebit. All right, and we get 7.81. Okay, so this is telling us that it takes almost 8 years for this company to pay down all of its debt, which is substantially longer than it's going to take its comparable, because it won't even take the comparable 5 years to pay down its debt. Okay, so we're going to go answer that question, and we're going to say that's going to take Sound Capture 8 years, and we're just going to say 8 instead of 7.81 because it asks us right here to round to the nearest year. Okay, question number 9. Using a ratio that includes only balance sheet items, which company is financially safest for the next year? So in this question, we're going to look at the current ratio because that only uses balance sheet items which can be liquidated in the next year. So go to the ratio analysis and we'll go find where the current ratio is. Right down here, current assets versus current liabilities. And we'll go ahead and solve for box 24. We'll need right here, current assets over current liabilities. All right, we'll go get those items from the balance sheet. Total current assets is right here. Current liabilities is also found on the balance sheet, right down here. Then we'll go ahead and solve for the current ratio, which is just assets divided by liabilities. And we get 2.32, which is higher than its comparables. So we're going to say that sound capture is safest for the next year, and we use the current ratio to determine that. Okay, so for question number 10, if each company took out a loan today, we should probably pay the higher interest rate. So the best way to solve this problem is to look at the interest rate that these companies are currently paying, because that is likely to tell us something about the interest rates that they will be paying if they were to take out a loan today. So to solve this, we are going to look at the interest rate ratio. All right, interest rate ratio is right here, and that is your interest divided by your total debt beginning a period. All right, so we have to solve for box 28, and we need interest, and we need total debt. All right, so we'll go solve for both these on the balance sheet. Interest is right here, 47.289. And then this asks us for total debt at the beginning of period. So we can't use the number we solved for earlier, which is total debt at the end of period. We have to use our quarter 5 financial information. Okay, so total debt, we go back to this balance sheet, and we're going to say total debt beginning of period is going to be equal to the short-term debt beginning of period plus the long-term debt beginning of period. All right, and we get 760.415. All right, to solve for the interest rate ratio, we just take the interest and we divide by total debt. And we get roughly 6.22%, which is lower than its comparables interest rate. So we go back to this question, which company pays the higher interest rate? So it does look like the comparable company would be most likely to pay a higher interest rate just based off the interest rates they are currently paying. So we're going to say the comparable, and we're going to say because we looked at the interest rate ratio.